Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're logging in from today. My name is Michelle DiFrancesco from the HR Daily Advisor, and I'm here as your host for today's session. We have a great session in store for you entitled Unlocking Potential: How Empowered Managers Drive High-Performing Teams, sponsored by your friends from Bonusly. If you wish to learn more about our session sponsor, Bonusly, you can hop on into the resource widget on your screen for more information. All right, everyone. So to get started with our session today, I do want to cover some housekeeping items to get you familiar with the session console. So first off, the console that you're looking at does have a few different application widgets that you can use during our presentation today. The most important widget on your screen is called the Media Player widget, and this should be sitting directly on top of the slides right now. This is where you can control the volume of today's session. Please do take note that there is no dial-in number for our attendees today, and the audio is streaming directly from your computer speakers, so please be sure they're turned up and on. You don't want to miss any part of today's session. However, if you do have to step away for any reason, or if you do miss any part of our session today, we are recording it, and we'll be sending a copy of the recording to each of you via email in about 24 hours, so keep your eyes open for that. Today's session has also been approved for 1 hour of HRCI and SHRM recertification credits, and we'll announce at the close of today's session how you can obtain your credit information. If anyone on the line today experiences any technical difficulty, please feel free to let me know the issue that you're experiencing by hopping on into the Q&A widget on the left-hand side of your screen, and I'll be happy to assist you today. And speaking of that Q&A widget, we're really excited to hear from you today. And we're going to be hosting a live Q&A session at the end of today's presentation, so I hope you all came with questions for our speakers. You can submit any questions that you have on today's topic at any point throughout our event by using that same Q&A widget that I had just mentioned. All right, and available to all attendees today is something called the Attendee Chat widget, and this is located on the left-hand side of your screen. This allows you to communicate with each other as well as with us as presenters, and keep your eyes open. We may be asking you some questions. So please submit any questions that we ask you. Please submit your responses in that Attendee Chat widget today. So let's get a feel for where that is and how it works. So let us know your name and where you're logging in from today by using that Attendee Chat widget that I had just mentioned. All right, everyone, let's dive into our presentation. I'm really excited to welcome our guest moderator today, David Brown, Marketing and Events Lead at Bonusly, who's here to introduce our guest speakers. Thanks so much, David. I'm going to kick it over to you to get us started.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and hello, everyone from HR Daily Advisor. Like Michelle mentioned, my name is David. I am on the marketing team here at Bonusly, and just really excited about today's webinar. It's a topic that we've been talking a lot about this year and pretty much all of last year, but really is just super crucial with just impacting your managers. And so really excited to be joined today by two amazing speakers. And before I introduce them, I do want to let you all know that we do love to make our webinars engaging. And so we have a few questions that we will go through with our two speakers. We'd love to hear your thoughts on those questions. We'd love to know if anything resonates with you all, if you all have any other ideas surrounding the questions. We'd love to make this interactive. And so please leave your thoughts in the chat. And like Michelle mentioned, we will save some time at the end for the Q&A. And so please leave any questions that may come up in there, and we will try our best to get to them. But before we dive in, we will start with some introductions. And so we'll start with you, Adrienne. But if you just want to let everyone know where you're calling in from, you know, what your role is, a little bit about your company, and then for a little icebreaker question for you and all of our attendees in the chat, what is your favorite springtime activity?
Sounds good. Happy to kick us off. Hi, everyone. Adrienne. I'm actually here representing Bonusly alongside David. I work out of our Boulder office in Colorado. I've been at Bonusly now for over 4 years, and I've always been a part of customer enablement and education. And really what I love doing is building content, doing trainings, getting all that information and values so that people can get the most out of Bonusly, because I truly believe like what we're trying to do and what our intentions are just so great. So I'm really happy to be here and excited to have a chat with you all.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And we'll pass it over to you, Harsh.
Thanks, David. I'm Harsh. I'm calling in from Toronto. I'm an Associate Experience Manager here at Tundra. Tundra is a global provider of total talent management solutions for some of the most recognizable organizations in the world. And my role here is to ensure that our associates have the best experience. With my team, as an extension of the people and culture group, we focus on the physical work environment, we focus on employee engagement and wellness, and just a lot of cool things to make sure that our associates like working with us and are set up for success.
Great. Thank you both so much.
David, I didn't say what I wanted to do my spring activity. I totally forgot.
Oh, yes.
Can
okay.
I add it real quick?
Yes.
I totally forgot your icebreaker. And it was top of mind because it is spring here. And I'm going to say listening to the birds, which makes me sound super old. But you know what? I just love it. And it just really, I recognize it's spring when I start hearing those birds. So sorry to interrupt. I've been wanting to share that and then I forgot.
Yes, the most important part.
I think I forgot about that too. But my favorite springtime activity would be just seeing everything blooming again. I have a lot of like nice gardens and parks around my house, and I just walk there in the evening and see everything's green, everything's blooming, all the flowers, and it's just nice to relax in the evening of doing that activity. That's my favorite thing about spring.
I love it. I am calling in from Jacksonville, Florida. And so our spring is a little different. It's pretty much like summer. And so my favorite springtime activity is honestly going to the beach because it's not super humid yet. It's not miserably hot. And so it's good to just sit out. You're not like dripping in sweat. And so, yeah, I totally agree though, but what both of you said, especially the everything blooming and sort of coming back to life. But awesome. I am so excited to be here with both of you today. And as you all heard in their introductions, you know, they both have these just amazing backgrounds and really roles in their companies that are really going to impact the discussion today. So really excited to just learn from them, hear what they're both doing in their roles and at their companies. And also just to hear from you all, you know, what resonates with you all, what you all think about these questions. And so let's dive right in. And so this first question, we'll start with you, Hirsch, but let's just set the stage. What to you is a high-performing team, and what are some key signs of one?
To me, David, high-performance teams, they are a group of diverse, talented individuals who are aligned on their goals and driven to achieve results. These teams have trust, they have collaboration, and they are aligned towards a shared vision. And these are the people that have a very high motivation, and this motivation comes from their people leaders who foster it, who take the time to understand what drives each individual and how they can work together and complement each other. And that makes all the difference. And when I'm thinking about the science, one of the key signs is clarity and understanding. Everyone in this high performing team is clear about their roles and responsibilities and how they contribute to the team and the organization's success. This can be done if we set expectations early on and then keep reinforcing those expectations in regular touch bases. This is something that I learned with Tandra's performance management training. We give guidelines to our people leaders for having effective first one-on-one meeting with their new hires, where they provide clarity to their new hires by aligning expectations on the deliverable, overall strategy, and also ask each other about your communication style and your recognition preferences and talk about learning styles. And this gives them a really good foundation to continue the relationship going forward and ensure that that communication remains effective. And also another sign that I'm thinking is trust and respect, which is super important. High performance teams cannot do what they do if they didn't have trust and mutual respect at all levels in the team. It's this trust and respect for the team members that allows them to collaborate. And it creates a safe space for everyone to bring their ideas and thoughts to the table because they know that their team members value what they have to say. And the teams can innovate for solutions and just discuss things a lot more openly and a lot more effectively if they have that trust and respect.
Yeah, I'll just jump in, Hirsch, and say a lot of what I'm thinking is completely in line with what you just said. Starting off, you know, when I'm thinking of what a high performing team looks like, I'm thinking like transparency, psychological safety is one of the first things that comes to mind. It's important to have that visibility across the organization to develop that sense of trust and really be able to lean in and support one another, especially when times are tough. I kind of like to consider this like real talk, right? We don't need to sugarcoat things. We need to be there for each other. We need to understand what's going on. It helps us be able to show up to the situation and be real and be our complete selves. I also think it is equally as important to kind of in line what you're saying about having goals, right? We need to be working on what's most important. I have seen often, and I myself have fallen into this, where it's like busy equals productive. And in a fast-paced business environment, that's not always the case, right? So you want to make sure you are working on the most important things that are driving the most value and impact and driving along those organizational and company-wide goals. And then the last thing I'll just add is that I think it's important to make sure that you set your team up for success, right? To be high performing, we want people to be in the right roles. We want to have clarity of expectations and what's going on. We want to model and empower teamwork and collaboration, ongoing feedback, and that's going to lead to continuous improvement. I think the other just really top of mind, most important thing to me is continuous improvement. And that comes from open, candid, all directions feedback. You know, you can give feedback upward, feedback can come top down. That allows, again, it all kind of points back to that trust and psychological safety, really empowering everyone to work together through the good times and the hard times.
Absolutely. And I love how you both mentioned clarity on goals and especially working towards one goal, you know, or the same goal. Because I know in past companies I've been at, things are very siloed, you know, and you have, you know, the marketing team working on their own goals. You have the sales team working on their own goals. But one thing here at Bonusly, especially, we had a new COO come in and really just tore down any silos that existed and really implemented this, you know, company-wide goals where every team is working towards the same thing. And it really helps, you know, everyone work together. And especially how you mentioned, Hirsch, trust, because trust is definitely a huge part in this. I love how you mentioned the one-on-ones, because those are definitely a huge piece in building that trust, especially with the managers. And I know we'll dig into a lot of this deeper, but I really appreciate you both giving, you know, the definition of what you both think a high-performing team is. But let's go to you, Adrienne, for this next question. So we set the stage. We all talked about sort of what we think high-performing teams are. It's not easy to make one. And so what are some common challenges that managers face in building and especially leading these high-performing teams in today's dynamic and, we'll say it, ever-changing, always changing work environment right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one, you took some words out of my mouth. Change is obviously going to be involved in this answer. Very influential factor there. But I think one thing that just has really been on my mind a lot recently is, one, just the concept of that we ask a lot of managers. We put a lot of responsibility on them for good reason. You know, they're meant to empower our teams, help drive business results. But from the research that I've read and what I've been seeing, it's that managers are facing pressures just across the board, from top down, from the bottom up, from their direct reports. And then on top of that, you're being asked to work faster, work smarter, be more efficient, deliver more, drive the results. And it can be a lot of work. At times, I've seen it leaves managers feeling maybe underappreciated, maybe undervalued, empowered words. But at the end of the day they're playing player coach roles in a lot of cases, right? They're doing things outside and not feeling appreciated for all that they're doing. And it's taking their focus away from, I think, one of the most important things managers can do, which is building skill sets on their teams, which is fostering the culture within the team that they're managing and upskilling, training, getting people working on the right path toward that systematic goal so that you can drive those business results. So you're getting a lot of pressure on those managers. I think it was it Gallup with that 64% of managers talk about how they have additional job responsibilities outside of managing a team. So again, they're acting kind of as that individual contributor working on admin things, in the trenches along with the team members, getting things done, trying to meet those goals. And what I've seen is that drives a lot, and I've struggled with this too, is drives a lot of context switching, so that you're being pulled in all these different directions, and it's really making it difficult to be efficient, to get the things that are most important done. I'm kind of circling back to that first question of working on what's the most important thing. So I think we all just need to take a step back and realize how much responsibility we're asking of managers, and then how can we train them and give them the tools that they need to, work best in the environment. The other thing I would just add to me that seems pretty hot topic these days is just burnout. Based on what I just said, managers are busy. Managers have a lot going on. They're doing things outside of the typical manager responsibility. And I can't remember, I think it was Slack did this research that 42% of managers feel burnt out, according to what they've studied, which is a lot. That's almost half of all managers feeling burnt out. It leaves them sometimes disengaged, right? If you don't have an engaged manager, it's so much harder to have an entire engaged workforce in a team, because the manager is really that person who models the behavior. They're leading the way. They're coaching and teaching other people how to be. And I think that by not recognizing that burnout has become a pretty big problem, we're kind of ignoring some of those foundational elements of what a high performing team is. So I think it's important to recognize that burnout and a lot of responsibilities on managers are keeping them from developing, coaching, fostering teams, and ultimately driving the right business results to get the biggest impact.
I think you said that beautifully, Adrian, and I agree with everything you said. I just want to touch on when you said unempowered. I think
that's the
one
word.
of the challenges.
Thank you.
There we go. But I really like that you mentioned it, because one of the challenges that managers feel is that they don't have the training and skills that they need to lead a dynamic work environment, and that's why they feel unempowered. And what we do as companies, we often promote our top individual contributors to lead the team and then expect them to be effective in their new role. But that's not always the case. If you look at trends, like you mentioned, a lot of studies have been done on this, and people leaders say that they've never received any formal training. They're left to figure it out by trial and error, and that approach is costly to the companies. It's stressful for the leaders and has a huge negative impact on psychological safety of the employees. And if we talk about the specific challenges of the last few years, there's a shift, there's a change in the traditional way we see workplaces, and there's been economic challenges that have led companies to make difficult business decisions. In all of this, we've required a lot of adaptability from our leaders, but not necessarily empowered them to lead with that adaptability. So I think it's really important that we take that into account when it comes to training and development. We make sure that all our people leaders have a baseline understanding of what's expected. And I would love to give an example. Tundra implemented a Thrive in Leadership program last year to ensure that all people leaders are set up for success and feel ready for the transition. It includes training, discussions, we share articles and podcasts, and we've just created a community of new and old people leaders so they can learn from each other and just support each other. And that has really worked well for us.
I will say, the more I hear about Tundra, the more I am so impressed, Hirsch. I know in our meetings before this, I was already blown away, but I just think it's amazing how much you all take care of your people and especially your managers. Because I really am happy that you both mentioned it, because these are two things that I will point you, a little commercial break, to some of our older webinars. If you go to our website, we've done a few webinars on the topic of manager burnout, which is a huge topic right now for the reasons that you both mentioned. But it's really hard this year, you know? And I will say, like, we have so many other resources on our website of webinars that we've done on the topic, because we have worked with a company called Bravely, who all they really are about is coaching and developing. And it really is huge because, like you mentioned, Hirsch, a lot of top performers and top ICs get promoted to managers, and there's no training, and it's a really big gap that we're starting to see. And so I am really happy that, one, you both mentioned that, but also just hearing what especially you all do at Tundra. And we'll stick with you, Hirsch, with this next one. We talked about it in the beginning, you both did, about the importance of especially trust, but also collaboration. And so how can managers foster trust, collaboration, and communication within their teams?
Thanks, David. I'll talk about trust first because the theme of the Thrive in Leadership program that we do is leading with trust. People look for authenticity, integrity, and expertise in a leader, which is the foundation for them to trust the leader. I've noticed that leaders often feel the need to show up as infallible, but their vulnerability is what makes them a lot more relatable, and that makes their team members trust them and makes the team feel comfortable just being themselves and bringing their whole self to work. A leader that presents mistakes as learning opportunities and leads by examples when it comes to ethics and conduct, they'll have a stronger connection with their team. And another aspect to building trust is consistency. You want to make sure that you're walking the talk consistently and you're helping the team make good decisions consistently that lead to their success, so they trust your expertise and they trust your just leadership. But going off of that, trust in a leader is one part of the equation. Trust within the teams is another important aspect. And this is where it becomes important for the leader to foster positive relationship within their teams and keep the rules and expectations clear and transparent. I know I keep saying clarity again and again, but it's so important. But this is important so no one loses the sight of the end goal and they collaborate well with each other. And important to note also that trust is a two-way street. You want your team members to trust you. You want your team members to trust each other. You also want to trust your team members. You have to show confidence in their abilities. You guide and coach them as needed, but also recognize their efforts and recognize their strengths and make sure that they feel that, you got their back because you trust them. I'm just going to share a personal example that worked really well for me. Our VP People and Culture at Tundra, she started bringing the whole People and Culture team together once a month because we're all based in different locations and do not get to see each other very often. So we do an informal session every month where we do an exercise called Thorn, Bud, and Rose. And the point of it is a thorn is something that's not going well. Bud is something that's on the horizon that we're very excited about. And Rose is something that is going well. There's easily the most favorite meeting of mine every month, and a lot of my colleagues agree as well. But the reason why it stands out to me is because in this meeting, I see my leader be so real about her challenges as well as her wins instead of being closed off. And that's such a game changer. It made me feel that I can also be vulnerable. I can also talk about my challenges and as well as celebrate myself. So this particular exercise, it just fosters such good relationships in the team, and we just trust each other. We know we got each other's backs, and we know that we can be open with each other. And that's something that always, I always mention because it stands out to me so much. I think the other part of your question is communication, which is tricky for a lot of us, but good thing is that we can learn to be better communicators by preparing in advance and by having a structure. When teams have trust, they become very open to communicating with each other as they are already brought into the fact that they are all working together for a shared vision. What needs to be done next is to just give them guidelines on what effective communication looks like. This can include how to have an effective one-on-one, which I was mentioning earlier, create an agenda by the both parties so everyone knows what to expect and what to prepare for. You can train people on how to give and receive feedback, and you can even just share some verbiage, some templates for people to refer to when they're doing it for the first time, and then what time they make it their own. So those are some of the things that we can do to improve communication. But another thing that I want to shout out is leverage your people and culture representatives. Anytime you need to make sure that you're communicating something the right way. You need to fine tune something. You need to check tone. You need whatever you need to do. Your people and culture reps are always more than happy to help you practice, give you feedback. So anything you want to communicate can have intended results.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking, what can I include? Because that was such a thorough explanation. But one thing that comes to mind, which I think relates to all of the components, fostering trust, collaboration, communication, is modeling the behavior. If you are asking your teammates to trust you and you're trying to build a safe environment, you need to return the favor and trust them and show what trust looks like at your company, so that it's not kind of something that's being said but not actually practiced. I see that the same way with collaboration, with communication. One thing that a previous VP of People Ops gave to me as a tool, which I use consistently and I love it, is just a really informal kind of questionnaire that when I have a new team member join my team, we each fill out this questionnaire, and it talks about what are your styles of communication? How do you like to receive feedback? One of the questions was, what's something that you do that you know you do that may come across as annoying, which is my favorite question, because it breaks things down. It makes people human. It increases that connection, building a relationship together. But again, you're modeling, hey, here's what it looks like to communicate effectively. How can we do this together? How can we both come to the table? And so that, again, it all, in my opinion, kind of goes back to building that level of trust. So that's all I'll add there, because I don't want to speak too much. I just think modeling what that looks like is just really, really powerful.
So important.
Absolutely. And that's honestly something that you both kind of mentioned. And really, from the sounds of it at Tundra, is something that you all really embrace and practice. And Adrienne, I know at Bonusly, we do that as well. And I know, especially on your team with Deborah, who's our Chief Customer Officer, just really modeling that behavior. And I think it really has that trickle-down effect where when your leader is so just sincere and so vulnerable and just building that trust, it's contagious. It makes you want to, build that trust, be vulnerable, and just has this amazing cycle. But we'll go to you, Adrienne, with this next question. We talked about a little bit with coaching and really kind of the lack of coaching, especially for managers right now. But how can companies support managers in developing their leadership skills, especially in areas like remote team and hybrid work models?
Yeah, I think this is a really great question because, Hirsch, as you mentioned, so often people are promoted to a manager position and may not be prepared to handle it, might be exceptional at what they do, a great individual contributor, a lot of potential to be an amazing manager, but haven't had that experience before. And when you're thrown into the depths of just figuring out on the fly, tacked on with all the other things going on, it's often really hard. So I would say one of the very most important things you can do is kind of what your team is doing at your company, Hirsch, is consistent training opportunities, setting an example of this is what a good one-on-one looks like. Here are some templates. Here are some ways that we can teach you how you can use these skills with other people. I think if we assume that everyone's just going to jump in and figure it out, as you mentioned, that can be a pretty big waste of time, and also taking focus and effort when it should be probably in other places. Something that you mentioned, Deborah, our Chief Customer Officer, she's amazing. Something that she does, and I absolutely love this, is provide stretch assignments, right? She's looking for feedback from us. She wants to know, what are you interested in? What are you not doing that you would like to try? Or what's a strength that you have that maybe we're not utilizing? And I think that open communication and then creating opportunities for me and for our other team members to maybe try some things in a safe environment that we haven't done yet, with a little bit of mentoring and a little bit of support, so that you build those muscles, and then the next time around you can just take it and run with it. So I absolutely love the opportunity to find stretch assignments for people. I think also companies can increase the visibility of their people, of the manager's work. That lifts them up, right? Recognition, appreciation, I think can be so powerful at times when a confidence boost is needed, because maybe someone, again, has that potential for the manager. Maybe it has to do with how they're talking to themselves, their inner confidence. And by boosting visibility, giving them more opportunities, providing those stretch assignments in addition to some training, I think really creates an opportunity for growth, but also like positivity and a positive culture. And then the last thing I'll say, just because I always think this is important, is frequent feedback. I think consistent, regular feedback, both good, both bad, both, in the moment, timely, constructive, that's going to help managers level up. That's going to help them understand and also model, here's how you get feedback from your team, right? That's important within a team. That's an important skill for managers to do. So really creating a culture of feedback and kind of setting the tone for what that looks like across the company in different teams.
That's such a lovely answer, Adrian. And I feel like you covered so many things that companies can do to support their managers. The only thing that I would add is that traditionally, we've been doing all of these things with a focus on in-person training, in-person mentoring, in-person collaboration. And I think a lot of companies are focused on bringing employees back to the office because we are unsure of how to effectively lead in a remote or a hybrid model. There was a survey last year by Resume Builder that asked 1,000 company leaders about their preferences, and 90% of them said that they want employees back in the office by end of 2024. Now, instead of us trying to bring people back, what if we just think of ways we can empower managers to lead hybrid instead? It would be the same things that you mentioned, Adrienne, about consistent feedback and fostering trust and collaboration, communication, all that fun stuff. But we get creative and we tweak them to be effective in a virtual space. It can be something as simple as how to be a better virtual communicator. We have a coaching partner that we invite to host sessions to build a connection with people you're talking to virtually. And they share best practices like treating camera as a third person, which personally I think I'm not doing very well right now. But when you treat the camera as a third person, you look at it while you're talking. The other person on the other side doesn't feel like you're looking somewhere on your screen and feels that you're so much more engaged in your conversation with them. And it's such a simple thing, but we've had so much feedback from our employees that it's made a huge difference in their virtual presence and in their virtual connections. And another thing to note is, like Adrian was mentioning earlier, managers play this role of player coach. When we're leading hybrid or remote teams, we need to intentionally make time to connect because we can't always meet face-to-face anymore. So having something like regular virtual coffee chats with your remote and hybrid teammates would be a small thing that you could do. One of my peers shared this with me actually, and she's been doing it with her team where she just sets up a time on a regular basis to have a virtual coffee chat with them. And she uses this time to just actively listen to whatever they have to say, whether it's personal or professional, whether it's challenges, whether it's wins. And she provides input if they want her to provide input. So it's really just their space. And her employees have started eagerly looking forward to this time with her because they feel so connected with her just with this simple exercise. But doing things like this, it would mean that people leaders need to spend more time on talent management, on engagement, and on relationship building. And like you said earlier, Adrian, there is a gap in organizations for people leaders to balance being an individual contributor and also being a mentor. So it's just very important that companies recognize that and make sure that the managers have enough resources on your team. So the operations still keep going optimally while they dedicate their time to leadership responsibilities.
You both covered so much there. And I really enjoy, Hirsch, how you mentioned intentionality. I think that's so huge. And it always comes up when we talk about the remote, hybrid, in office, the great debate of the last few years. But it really does always come up. Intentionality is key, like they say. But one thing that you both mentioned that leads great into our next question is feedback. And we did a webinar, I want to say a couple weeks ago, about feedback, because it always comes up in our webinars, and every time it is a loaded discussion because there is so much to learn and so much to talk about. And one of our speakers actually put it so well. She was like, feedback is such a interesting thing because it's this practice that we don't really have in the normal world, quote unquote. It's not something that we typically practice with friends or with partners or with spouses, and it's kind of this awkward thing that no one has really been trained in until the workplace. And so I would encourage everyone, if you are interested in that, check out that webinar. But we'll touch on it a little bit here, and we'll start with you, Hirsch. But what role does feedback play in employee engagement and performance? And how can we make sure that managers are providing meaningful feedback to their teams?
Thanks, David. Like you said, it is a loaded topic, and I feel like I have so much to say. So please stop me if I'm going too long. Feedback is absolutely crucial to employee engagement and performance. Feedback, when given in a constructive way, whether it's reinforcing or it's corrective, it shows people that their leaders are invested in their growth and want them to succeed. And that knowledge makes them want to engage with their roles better and makes them want to engage with the organization better. So it really creates this culture of learning and growth and a sense of accountability, which is, we're talking about high performance teams. It's very important in high performance teams. Timely feedback has a very direct impact on performance because it provides employees with direction that they need to be on track to accomplish their goals. So we've been talking about clear expectations. Feedback is how you ensure that those expectations remain clear on an ongoing basis, ensure that everyone remains on the same page. And if anything needs to be revised, if there are any gaps in learning, it can be addressed before it's too late. To provide meaningful feedback, which is the second part of your question, there's a few things that people leaders need to keep in mind. And the very first of them would be intent. Your intention to give feedback should always be improvement. And so anytime you're going out to give someone some feedback, just ask yourself, why am I doing this? And how does this help my team improve? Then share that context with your teammate before you give them feedback. Just say, hey, I have something to say, and this is how it helps. That would just make the employees feel a lot more comfortable receiving it. It would still be uncomfortable, not gonna lie, but it just makes it easier. And then timeliness, of course. It's important to give feedback on things that have just happened. It's important to coach in the moment because it's still fresh in your employee's mind. It's still fresh in your mind as well. And the conversation can happen a lot more effectively. They can actually reflect on what they did and what they need to do if it is fresh in their mind. Whereas if it was something that happened 3 days ago, they might not remember and they might not know what to do differently. Or even if it's reinforcing feedback, they might not know what they need to keep doing. So timeliness is crucial. Another thing that I'm thinking about is making it regular. And again, just to make feedback, like this whole process, like come off natural. The more you give feedback, the more you receive feedback, the easier and effective it becomes. Because it's a conversation that happens often and it happens with the intention of growth and learning. So in order to reinforce that culture of accountability and culture of growth and learning, make sure that their feedback happens regularly and you're not waiting for your 6-month performance review or your annual performance review to talk about how your team members did. And another thing I want to say is be specific when you're talking about feedback. You know that you have certain goals for your team. Let them know which goals you're talking about when you're giving them feedback, which goal it ties to, how it affects your overall strategies. And we hear the term balanced feedback a lot, and I've often seen it described as give positive feedback and negative feedback together, so it's easier to accept and, blunts the blow a little. But I don't quite agree with that because I think balanced feedback given in that way would be just confusing. You'd be telling me I'm doing good, and then you'd also be telling me I'm doing bad. I don't really know. you're confusing me. So for me, balanced feedback, what it means is that you give positive feedback just as often as you give corrective feedback. Um, it just means that any opportunity that you see to coach in the moment, to give feedback in the moment, you're not missing it. And doing that would just make it balanced because the employees are getting recognized for their strengths and they're getting help where they need help on a regular basis. And that makes it balanced. Um, the final piece of puzzle that I would talk about is method of delivery. We often don't really pay a lot of attention to it, but I think it's so crucial. When you're getting to know your teams, you ask them what their communication preferences, and you also get to know them, how they operate, what their stress and anxiety levels are, and things like that. Just making sure that you know your team well, and that helps you decide what method of delivery is appropriate for this particular team member. Someone might prefer a verbal feedback, someone might prefer a written feedback. And also, there are certain situations when you want it to be a written feedback, so there's no miscommunication or there's no, people forgetting smaller details. So making sure that you're thinking about what is the right method of delivery for this particular feedback that I'm going to give to this person. So said a lot. Again, giving the feedback is a skill. It can be developed with practice and structure. As people and cultural leaders, we can always prepare some templates and best practices to give people, which is something that we include in our leadership training, so they can refer to it when they need to. And with time and with the stronger relationships that managers build with their teams, they figure out what works best. And most importantly, we need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, as we're working with people who, they're people, they have emotions. It's not always going to be pleasant. So we need our managers to have good emotional intelligence and self-regulation. So in stressful times, they can stay calm. Like for me, if I know that someone I'm talking to and I'm giving them feedback and they're gonna maybe shut down, maybe get defensive, I try to remind myself that it's not personal, and I acknowledge how they're feeling and I reiterate my intent, and making sure that with that reiteration, they understand that, this is something that's coming from a good place and coming from a place of encouraging improvement and success. And then I just have to give them some time to process and come back with their own realization and understanding. And that's something that I keep in mind a lot.
Yeah, I'll just echo that regular, consistent feedback. I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room. Feedback has a bad rap. It's scary. It at times makes people defensive. And I think by having it be conversational, having it be regular, having it be consistent, all the things that you were just talking about helps reduce that anxiety of it's feedback, right? It becomes a conversation. It becomes, hey, we're helping one another. We're uncovering things where we can get better. We're solving problems faster because we can talk about it in the moment and not wait till a half, a 6 month review period when we're talking about all these things that happened in the past that don't really matter anymore. So I just want to echo what you're saying in that is it okay? Let's remove the stigma of feedback and let's build conversations together about getting better to drive performance.
Absolutely. And I will say again, we have a great webinar on our website. So if you are really interested in this feedback discussion, check that one out. I know we have another one coming up because it is such a big topic right now. But I do remember in our webinar, they talked about the sandwich method. And just like you were saying, Hirsch, it is confusing, if you're saying, hey, you did really good, and then something corrective, and then, hey, but you did really good. It is confusing. And so it was a very big topic of that webinar. But I'm glad you mentioned that because it is important to be balanced, but in the right way, as you mentioned. So we do have two more topics that we're going to discuss real quick. And this first one is really about identifying and leveraging the strengths of your team. And then the next one is our favorite topic here at Bonusly, and that is really the importance of recognizing your people and your managers especially. And so we'll start with you, Adrienne. But how can managers identify and leverage the unique strengths and skills of their team members to maximize team performance?
Yeah, so I'll list out a couple here. I won't go into too much detail because I think that's a whole nother conversation, but just some things that either I've practiced or I've had a manager implement working together include regular check-ins, pulse checks, again, going back to that beyond just tell me what you're working on. How are you doing? What are you interested in? What's something that you would like to try out? Really start to open up that conversation and create that visibility and transparency. Something else that we're doing at Bonusly is really leaning into workshops like Strength Finders, actually going through that assessment. And then we're doing a workshop across my entire department of why are we doing this? Why does this make sense? How do our strengths play together? I think sometimes just knowing your strengths, maybe not quite enough. It's kind of like, how do you actually now take action on them? So I definitely recommend, some sort of training or discussion related on what does acting on strengths look like. I'll head back to that stretch assignments. Again, I think that's one really, really powerful way to get people not only to recognize their strengths, but to put them into practice, put them into action. And then the last two would be just some things that have been passed down to me are leveraging coaching models, like the GROW model, where you're using specific questions. Managers don't always know the answers, so it's important to ask the right questions to help come to a conclusion together. And then situational leadership, where you're adapting your style of management to fit the person where they're at. And just by doing that, it can really help develop a relationship that meets the needs of both parties, but also can be positive and grow in a lot of different ways. So those would be some of the things that I would recommend.
I think those are all great options, Adrian. And I would just start by saying, first and foremost, ensure that there's diversity on your teams, because these unique strengths and skills that we need come from people having different lived experiences that shape them who they are. We have a lot of unconscious bias when we are hiring, and we often, lean towards hiring a certain demographic that we relate more to. And it's true with every single person. So it's important that we are aware of our unconscious biases and ensure an inclusive hiring process. Again, something that Tundra does. We created Being an Inclusive Recruiter program with a partner, and we ensure that all of our employees go through this, whether or not they're recruiters, because it's important. And what the program talks about, it's unconscious bias, how to recognize it, how to avoid it. So having something like that in place, so there's diversity in your team. But then to your question, David, to identify team strengths, Adrian mentioned a lot of great approaches, and mine are kind of similar to that. So I'm not going to dive too deep, but asking right questions, like you said, Adrian. Sometimes people just do something on a regular basis and they do it so well, but they don't necessarily know that this is a strength of theirs because they're taking it for granted or they're just downplaying its value. So managers asking them right questions. If a manager comes to me and says, hey, what are your strengths? I might not say much. But if a manager asks me, hey, so what it is about your job that you really like doing, what it is that you look forward to and that excites you, I'm going to start talking about something. And with that conversation, my leader can know that, okay, this is something that she does well and she does well and she enjoys it. And having that conversation, you can help your employees realize that, you're excited about this because you do it so well. And that is a strength of yours, and just name that for them. And that's such a game changer. Also, self-assessment for employees. I know that for us here at Tundra, we have a performance growth plan exercise where employees have to list out their strengths and development areas and then use this list to set goals for themselves. When they do it for the first time, not so great because, like I said, they don't necessarily know their strengths. But making this an annual exercise and, doing check-ins with this exercise, they get a lot better at realizing their strengths, and their managers get a lot better at realizing their strengths, and they both get a lot better at refining and using these strengths. So that's another thing. And I really like that you mentioned Strength Finder, Adrian. I was looking it up yesterday as well. We can also use behavioral assessments or cognitive assessments to realize or to find out people's strengths. Tundra uses this behavioral assessment tool that one of my colleagues actually calls it weirdly accurate corporate astrology, which I always find so funny. But what it does is it assigns people a certain behavioral profile based on questions, and then it gives managers the strategies to engage this particular person based on their behavioral profile. And it tells the managers that these are this person's strengths and these are the things that you can do to develop them based on, millions of people that they have done this exercise with and all that data that they've collected. So those are some of the things that I would recommend. And the last thing I would say is when you're realizing someone's strengths on your team, make sure that the rest of the team knows it as well. Make sure that you're shouting them out. And whenever you're doing like a strategy session and whenever you're assigning projects, make sure that you say, hey, so this person has excellent communication skills. Let's give this project to them. So the rest of the team also sees it and the rest of the team also trusts in that person's strengths.
I love it. And we have one more question, and we'll spend about 5 minutes on this one, and then we'll save time we'll probably get to one question, which is okay because you all have had so many great insights to share. But this next question is one, like I mentioned, that we really hold near and dear here at Bonusly, and really is just the power of recognition. And so we'll start with you, Hirsch, but why is employee recognition crucial for performance? And what are some strategies that folks can use to implement these programs?
Absolutely, David. Anytime I'm talking with my employees or managers in any kind of conversation, recognition and celebrating wins comes up so often. And I feel like it's uniform across the board. People like feeling valued and respected. Now, how they like to be recognized can be different from different people. Some might not like spotlight as much as the others, but recognition still remains the driving factor for employee motivation and engagement. And engaged and motivated teams just perform better because they know what they are doing makes a difference and they want to do more of it. This also leads to better retention, which is always a top priority for HR, increased sense of belonging in the organization as well. And I think it also impacts performance because the team members would do what they're recognized for, they'll just do it more consistently. And then that's just going to drive your results. So pretty straightforward, but talking about effective strategies when implementing a recognition program, first of all, determine your why. What it is that you need this recognition program to do. For us, we wanted our teams to be engaged with each other better. So we built a recognition program with the help of our friends at Bonusly, which is a peer-to-peer recognition program. And Bonusly's analytics dashboard allows us to see which teams are the most active in recognizing each other. And when we take that and look at like the company's metrics, these are usually the same teams that are performing the best. So that connection, it just makes things a lot clearer about why recognition, is important. And then talking about building a recognition program, you want to ensure that it stays top of mind for everyone. You want to make sure that especially your managers, they know that there's a recognition program in place and they're using it on a regular basis. And it's always great to share these recognition stories on your socials to just build a brand presence for your company. We do an Associate of the Month program and we use Bonusly to track that as well. We see which associate got the most peer-to-peer recognitions on Bonusly, and then we recognize them as the Associate of the Month on our socials. And we've realized that the posts that we make on LinkedIn that have something to do with celebrating our associates, they get the most engagement. And that just tells you that, you're building a brand presence and you're attracting talent, because who wouldn't want to work for a company that really celebrates its associates, right? So these are some of the things that I would say. And then, if you're just starting out and you want to see how recognition can have an impact on your organization, there's a lot of low-cost ideas you can do. You could do thank you cards. You can make sure that your managers know the value of gratitude and make it a regular practice. You can announce and celebrate promotions, mentorship opportunities, whatever works for your organization. Just find that thing that can help your employees feel recognized and valued and respected.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just chime in with a couple additional things. I think to add on what you were just talking about would be, I see recognition firsthand and how it can build a culture of appreciation across your entire company, which increases engagement and increases all the things we've talked about this webinar: trust, psychological safety, and just that ability and the desire for people to want to lean in and support one another when it matters. I would also say that it builds stronger teams. It increases visibility into the work that everyone's doing, and helps you not feel like you're alone on an island. It brings you together. It helps you, especially in a remote work environment. The more that you can interact, have conversations, share stories, show appreciation, it helps you feel, excuse me, connected to your teammates. So when I think of strategies, obviously Bonusly is a strategy, which I use every day because I work at Bonusly too. But something that one of our user researchers recently pointed out, which to me is just so important, is including appreciation in your recognition. She put it in a way that appreciation is a way to show gratitude for a person's value, while recognition shows gratitude for their actions. So I think that's a pretty quick and easy way to like start building this culture of showing some appreciation. In addition to, hey, you did an excellent job on this presentation. You also were a really great speaker and mindful of the questions, coming in, and had amazing responses. So that is one strategy that I would include. And I would also say, make sure you're evolving. Don't set it and forget it. Whatever your strategy is, it needs to be constantly growing and changing as your people and your company is growing and changing. And also, I'm going to go back to that one piece of just modeling the behavior. I have a story of a direct report once that was just so excited when one of our top ELT members sent her some recognition, and it was just like mind blowing to her. She was just like, she felt seen and heard and so appreciated. And in my mind, I'm like, this is normal, right? And you have to remember that it's not always normal. So really try to model it across your organization. Really helps increase that positive vibe.
Well, +1 to everything you both said. I am going to put Hirsch and Adrianne's LinkedIns on the screen. So if you want to continue the conversation, please connect with them. I'm sure they would love to talk more about anything. I know there were some questions for Hirsch about the rose, bud, and thorn, but please connect with them. But we also ended this on the recognition topic. And like Adrianne and Hirsch both mentioned, we, especially at Bonusly, really believe that recognition and appreciation really leads to high-performing teams. It really provides that avenue, especially for your managers, to just easily recognize their direct reports and receive recognition. And so if you would like any information, would like a demo about Bonusly, we're going to launch a poll here. Answer that poll and we will have someone reach out to you. But we are coming up on time, so I will quickly pass it to Michelle. I think we have time for one question.
Absolutely, David. Thank you so much, Hirsch and Adrianne. Fantastic presentation. You can always tell it was a great one with all the comments and the questions that come in. So kudos to the two of you, and David, thank you again. Yes, unfortunately, we do only have time for one or so questions here. So the question that I'm going to ask is, would you provide any resources or programs for a company on a tight budget? And I'll let the two of you jump in there.
I can jump in if that's okay, Adrianne. So if it is a tight budget, think about something that you can do with the resources that you already have. Think about building a program where you can use internal communications like company-wide emails, celebrating your employees. One thing you can do is ensure that there's recognition within the teams. Your managers need to be on top of it and, train them and say, hey, so gratitude, appreciation, recognition, these are the things that it does. This is how it will help you engage your team. And then just check in with them and see if you can see if they're doing it. Something that I'm considering doing, I haven't started it yet, so I can't speak for the results, but I am thinking of just putting an email like a calendar and reminder in all our people leaders' calendars on a weekly basis, saying spend 5 minutes recognizing your teams, or spend 5 minutes sending a gratitude note. Things like that simple to do and still have an impact.
Yeah, I would just add onto that, making people feel seen and heard. I think it can be so powerful and impactful in a way that doesn't have to cost a lot of money.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Adrian, Hirsch, and David. Fantastic presentation, like I said. I am going to leave this poll up on the screen for just another couple of seconds here. So anyone who has not submitted their response yet, you still have some time to do so. So please go ahead and do that. We are hitting the top of the hour, so unfortunately we do have to wrap our session up here. I do want to thank you all again so much for spending the afternoon with us and sharing your insights, presenting that content. Fantastic information. And for anyone on the line who wants to watch it again, we did record the entire session and we'll be sending a copy out to you via email in about 24 hours. So keep your eyes open for that. And I know we had a ton of questions that we did not get to today due to time, but don't worry, we will be following up with your questions via email after the event as well. And as I mentioned, this session has been approved for 1 hour of HRCI and SHRM recertification credits. However, you must be attending our session live. So today, April 23rd, in order to be eligible to receive the credit codes for this session. And our system does keep track of all of our live attendees. So in that same email that you're going to receive with the link to the recording, you're going to have the copy of the code sent to you as well. So keep your eyes open for that. All right, everyone, one more time, thanks for spending the afternoon with us. Thank you, Adrian, Hirsch, and David, and a huge thanks to Bonusly for helping make this event possible. And again, if you do wish to learn more about our session sponsor, Bonusly, hop on into the resource widget on your screen for more information. All right, everyone, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and we can't wait to see you on the next HR Daily Advisor webinar soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.